Welcome back guys, what a great day. And I'm here again with another cool informative video on next gaming title, State of Decay 3. Okay, let's roll. Since Undead Labs teased its sequel of the adored zombie fighting franchise, State of Decay, fans have patiently waited for any notion of progress. The game was first unveiled with a cinematic trailer at the Xbox Games Showcase in 2020. Fast forward today and State of Decay 3 has been in silent waters with nothing to show for it for the past few years. Its slow progression has supposedly been the cause of many things, from the devastating effects of the pandemic to allegations of burnout and mismanagement within the company, and other factors, hindering State of Decay 3's development. While the world's zombie obsession isn't as prevalent as it was a few years ago, we're still staged to see some serious undead action in the future. Undead Labs has a third entry in its State of Decay series in the works that will surely pit an eclectic cast of survivors against hordes of wandering undead as they try to rebuild a home in a brutal world. Each entry of the series so far has included action-adventure, survival horror, stealth, role-playing, and strategy elements, blending genres into an interesting civilization rebuilding and zombie decapitating experience. The State of Decay series might not have been a huge AAA franchise from the first second, but it's quietly grown into one with a cult following. And that success has been confirmed by Microsoft purchasing its developer Undead Labs in 2018. Now there's a third game on the way, and while much about the game is still under wraps, we've gathered all of the key details for you. Only whispers, murmurs, and vague statements among development and publisher executives, investigations, and reports can help point fans' expectations toward a much clearer answer. Beyond that, Undead Labs and Microsoft have left no crumbs for the community to follow. The first noteworthy hint toward the game's release and content was State of Decay 3's cinematic trailer. This near 2-minute YouTube video isn't the most revealing, but it details supposedly most of the gameplay's focus being zombified animals running rampant across the game's open world. Past this, it's still a dog-eat-dog world, only this time around, winter has caught up, and survival has become even more perilous, knowing death comes in many forms, including undead deers. The trailer doesn't end with any sort of release window, so we're sadly in the dark when it comes to an expected release date for State of Decay 3. There has been a little noise on that front, though, with Phil Spencer mentioning in March 2022 that he's been trying out the game and is hugely impressed by how it iterates on the previous title in the series. That makes it sound like we might not have to wait too long for a bit more information to appear. In September 2022, Xbox's Matt Booty confirmed that Undead Labs is working with Gears of War devs The Coalition on the game and making it an Unreal Engine 5, collaborating to bring some tech from Gears of War into the game. That's an exciting collaboration, but doesn't get us any closer to a release date. Where we can be a little more confident, though, is around the platforms it'll appear on. Since the developer is now owned by Microsoft Studios, you can be almost certain that it'll only come out on Xbox and PC. We also expect the game to hit Game Pass on its release date, as another reason to sign up to Microsoft's great subscription service. Neither Undead Labs nor Microsoft has announced a release date for State of Decay 3. Which means it will be a while before we see the much-anticipated sequel. When the cinematic announcement trailer was released at the Xbox Games Showcase event in July 2020, Undead Labs said the game was in the early pre-production stages. According to reports, Undead Labs was pressured into releasing an announcement trailer before developers felt like they were ready to do so. A March 2022 investigative report from Kotaku outlined Undead Labs' massive culture shift after it was acquired by Microsoft in 2018. Which has resulted in allegations of mismanagement, burnout, and misogyny. Fans hope to catch a new look at State of Decay 3 during the Xbox and Bethesda Games Showcase 2022. But it was not mentioned at all. There was also no new news from the studio during any other 2022 gaming events. It appears the project is still in pre-production, and the situation at Undead Labs doesn't bode well for a release anytime soon. It's unlikely to hear much more until the 2023 showcase, which will hopefully have more information. Meanwhile, Undead Labs has continued support for State of Decay 2, first released in 2018. With fairly regular updates being published by Xbox Game Studios. State of Decay 3 will be available on the Xbox Series X and S and PC. It's unlikely that the game will be released during a timeframe when new games are still being featured on last-generation consoles. Since there's no hint of a release date, there's absolutely no pre-order information available. Our first and only look at State of Decay 3 is the cinematic announcement released by Microsoft in July 2020. While there aren't any plot or gameplay details in the trailer, there's still a bit to unpack. The trailer shows a lone female survivor trying to survive in a cold, hostile environment. Fans have suggested the game's location could be Alaska, Colorado, Wyoming, or Canada based on the scenery. Sharpening wooden bolts for her crossbow beside a campfire, The survivor hears something in the surrounding forest. Piercing white eyes appear in the darkness, staring down at the lone human. Instead of firing her crossbow, running away, or at least extinguishing her fire to be less visible, the survivor does something we've all been taught not to do in a zombie apocalypse scenario. She screams at whatever is hunting her, not out of fear, but seemingly to intimidate it. And it works. Whatever was creeping up on her campsite runs away. But what was it? In each previous State of Decay entry, sound is an absolute no-no. The more noise you make, the more zombies will chase you down, yelling and calling more undead allies along the way. Later in the short trailer, the survivor finds a trail of blood in the snow and begins tracking someone, or something, that's been wounded. Staring down the eyesights of her crossbow, she sees a wolf carcass being eaten by what looks like a zombified deer. The entire right side of its face is ripped open and rotting. After a beat, the deer lets out a horrifying shriek, and the trailer abruptly ends. Weren't zombies enough? Now we have to deal with zombie animals out in the wilderness too. We hope there are significant weapon upgrades from the simple crossbow shown in the trailer. We're going to need all the firepower we can find. We don't have any specific gameplay details yet, but we're assuming that the core of State of Decay 3 will look a lot like its predecessors. Controlling a small community of survivors, players will comb the map for supplies to survive, other lost folks to recruit to their community, and plenty of plague hearts to destroy, surrounded by countless zombies. A few things fans expect to get an overhaul are the game's base building system, which was a little clunky in State of Decay 2, more robust customization options for weapons, cars, clothes, and a bit more character development. While the characters of State of Decay 2 had plenty of background stories to share and quirky one-liners that gave them a bit of life, there was virtually no change to characters throughout the game, and very few instances where characters seriously bonded. If a long-standing member of the community got taken out by a stray plague zombie, the rest of the crew would have low morale for a day or so, and maybe give a single remorseful line. But then it was back to business. As we mentioned already, this is the first time that the State of Decay games have moved into the wilderness. Given the survival elements of the games, that means that the third installment could see weather as a key factor, and it may affect how shelters are built or warmed. In a recent podcast, Xbox Game Studios head, Matt Booty, revealed that State of Decay 3 is being made in Unreal Engine 5, with the assistance of Gears of War developer The Coalition, meaning that the new entry in the series will be visually stunning whenever it releases. While the one trailer we have for the game is entirely CGI, it nonetheless helps us to glean some information about what the game might include when it releases. For one thing, it confirms that we'll again be having to concentrate on survival by scavenging and hunting for food. The cold weather that's featured prominently might mean warmth, and shelter mechanics could enter the field of play too, making survival even more challenging. The prominent and scary, zombified deer in the trailer also makes us hope that there's an expanded amount of wildlife to worry about, both of the infected and normal sort. State of Decay 2 was mainly a solo venture, but there were plenty of ways to play with friends or join in on strangers' games. After you started a campaign, you could have a friend join you, taking over another survivor in your community. There were a few limitations to the system, though. The incoming player would be tethered to the host, meaning if the second player strayed too far away, they would black screen and return to an area close to the host. So there was no room for completely separate exploration on the same map, and the tethering system made quick getaways from zombie hordes a little too easy in some cases. Players could also use the in-game radio to put out a call for help on the State of Decay servers, inviting any other player online to jump in and play on your map. There was also cross-platform play enabled between Xbox and PC players. It's safe to assume that State of Decay 3 will have similar multiplayer options in place. One option that we believe was missing from its predecessor was truly shared servers. Building up a community with your friend that you both could access at any time would be great, as opposed to having a buddy jump into a map you owned. It was never very fun to put in work on someone's community and level up a survivor, only to log on to your own game and be back at square one. State of Decay 2 saw a handful of DLCs during its lifetime. Each one introduced a handful of new weapons, vehicles, outfits, and facility mods to the game, spicing up the game a bit. The final DLC, titled Heartland, brought players back to Trumbull Valley, the original setting of State of Decay, for a more story-based game mode. In Heartland, players choose from two sets of starting characters who have traveled to Trumbull Valley for different reasons. Both pairs of survivors are on a mission to find people important to them, characters who appeared in the original State of Decay. The DLC also introduced the largest base site in the game, Blood Plague Freaks, Freaks are super-powered zombies with special abilities in the base game. Now they can infect you with Blood Plague too. And answers to questions about how exactly the Blood Plague came to be. We will surely see a handful of DLCs released for State of Decay 3. It'll be interesting to see if any will revisit a previous setting like Heartland, considering how different the snow-covered mountains of the new titles appear to be. A report by WCCF Tech revealed a little more information about State of Decay 3. But nothing too majorly important about the game's content or release dates. Speaking on Xbox's Major Nelson podcast, Xbox Game Studios head Matt Booty dived into the game's progression, stating that it's supposedly being made with Unreal Engine 5, with assistance from other Gears of War developers at the Coalition. Xbox Game Studios head Matt Booty assured State of Decay 2 fans that the sequel was still in development. Booty stated, "You mentioned Undead Labs, they're working with the Coalition up in Vancouver. Our Gears of War studio, using some of the technology around Unreal Engine 5 and some of the stuff that's been in Gears of War before, to bring that into State of Decay 3. Booty added, all of that, the things they are doing there, are really the testbed, the proving grounds for all the stuff that's going in State of Decay 3. In addition, Booty also assured State of Decay 2 fans that there's still been ongoing development for the franchise's sequel. They're supposedly fine-tuning the game. Undead Labs is supposedly fine-tuning State of Decay 3 on Unreal Engine 5, with the assistance of Xbox's Gears of War developers. But some question whether State of Decay 3's progression is slow because of fine-tuning or maybe other heavier underlying issues within the company behind developing the game. An in-depth investigative report by Kotaku highlighted the allegations of mistreatment, mismanagement, and burnout of Undead Labs employees because of indecent and improper leadership and more issues. Allegations state that the development team behind State of Decay 3 wasn't ready to announce the game last June 2020. The report stated that Microsoft supposedly forced the development team to announce State of Decay 3, despite being in pre-production, having no collective agreement, and plan to unveil the game. Undead Labs hadn't planned to announce State of Decay 3 in 2020, let alone show it, but Microsoft requested trailers from many of its studios in the lead-up to the Xbox Series X and S launch. Three sources familiar with the decision said, stated Kotaku senior reporter, Ethan Gatch. It seems State of Decay 3 won't be arriving very soon, but there likely will be some information or another trailer in 2023. Noting this, the report stated many things, with the aforementioned trailer release being the tip of the iceberg. It's highly worth reading Ethan Gatch's report on the allegations of mistreatment and mismanagement within Undead Labs. However, from what it seems, State of Decay 3 might not be near release anytime soon. Fans might be waiting a few more years for the game's release, with 2023 possibly bringing another cinematic trailer during this Xbox Games Showcase. Until then, we'll endeavor to update you once it happens.